I think a lot of Gen Z is secretly exhausted from thinking about money all the time. Not even in a dramatic way, just constantly. You check your banking app before making plans. You mentally calculate groceries while walking around the store. You buy something small and immediately wonder if you should have saved the money instead. Even getting paid doesn't feel exciting anymore, it just feels like temporary relief. And maybe that's the weirdest part. A lot of people aren't chasing luxury anymore, they just want life to stop feeling financially tense all the time. Because there's this constant pressure sitting underneath everyday life now. Not panic exactly, more like permanent financial awareness, like part of your brain is always running calculations in the background, no matter what you're doing. And after a while, you stop feeling like money is something you use. It starts feeling like something you constantly recover from. I think that's why so many people feel exhausted right now, even when they technically have a job and are doing okay. Because being financially functional and feeling financially secure are completely different things. A lot of people imagined adulthood would feel more stable than this, more settled, more predictable. Instead, it feels like life became one long attempt to stay afloat correctly. And you can see how deeply this stress affects people in small ways. People hesitate before agreeing to plans now. People leave things sitting in online shopping carts for days. People avoid checking emails because they're worried it's another bill, another payment, another problem they forgot about. Even relaxing feels different now. You sit down to watch something, but part of your brain is still thinking about rent, or debt, or the future, or whether you're falling behind without realizing it. And the strange part is how normal this feeling became. People joke about being broke constantly now. People joke about overdrafts. People joke about never retiring. People joke about financial stress because if they didn't laugh about it, they'd probably have to admit how heavy it actually feels. And when huge numbers of young adults say they're living paycheck to paycheck, eventually you realize this feeling is way bigger than individual bad decisions. Something about modern life genuinely changed. Because a lot of people aren't asking, how do I become rich? They're asking, why does surviving feel this mentally exhausting all the time? I think this is the real reason a lot of Gen Z feels financially trapped. It's not just the money itself, it's the loss of a clear future. Because people can handle stress surprisingly well when they believe it's leading somewhere. Working long hours feels different when you believe stability is eventually waiting for you at the end of it. A house, savings, a stable life. Something solid you slowly build toward over time. And for a long time, that belief made sense. There was a period where an average salary could realistically support an average life. Not luxury, just stability. You worked a normal job and there was at least a believable path toward owning a home, supporting a family, building savings, and eventually feeling settled. The finish line felt visible. People felt like adulthood had structure to it. You moved through stages, you progressed slowly. Hard work and stability felt connected, even if life wasn't perfect. But now that relationship feels weaker. A lot of young adults look at housing prices, rent, salaries, debt, and living costs. And the math just feels emotionally discouraging. In many places, homes cost dramatically more compared to average salaries than they did decades ago. Rent consumes huge portions of people's income. Even people earning decent money often still feel financially fragile. And slowly, ownership itself started feeling less normal. Now, a lot of people feel like they're permanently renting their way through adulthood. Renting homes, financing cars, monthly payments for everything. Even stability itself feels borrowed sometimes. There's a reason that, quote, "you'll own nothing and be happy," unsettled so many people when it spread online. Because for a lot of young adults, it already feels psychologically true. Not because people expect mansions or luxury lifestyles, just because they want something that feels stable enough to mentally settle into. But after years of hearing things like, "you'll probably never retire," "you'll never afford a house," "the economy is impossible," eventually people internalize it, and that changes motivation psychologically. Because once stability stops feeling realistic, effort starts feeling different too. At some point, a lot of young adults stopped feeling like they were progressing financially and started feeling like they were permanently maintaining instability. That's a very different feeling. You work, you pay bills, you survive the month, then you do it again, and again. And after enough repetition, people start quietly asking themselves, is this it? Because humans need to feel movement. They need to feel like their stress is building towards something meaningful. But modern adulthood often feels like running on a treadmill financially. Constant motion without the emotional feeling of progress. And I honestly think that's why so many people feel lost right now. Not because they don't work hard, but because uncertainty changes people psychologically after a while. Some people stopped imagining retirement before they even turned 25. That's how disconnected people started feeling from the future. And when the future starts feeling unreachable, adulthood itself starts feeling strange too. You ever notice how a lot of people talk about life now like they're waiting for it to properly begin? Like everything is just for now. This apartment is temporary. This job is temporary. Living with parents again is temporary. Being financially stressed is temporary. But then years pass, and the temporary feeling never fully leaves. I think that's why a lot of Gen Z feels emotionally suspended between adolescence and adulthood. People are getting older, but they don't feel established. That's different. Because adulthood used to feel connected to permanence. You built a life slowly, you settled into routines, you became stable over time. Now everything feels flexible, unstable, replaceable, uncertain. And that uncertainty leaks into people emotionally. You can hear it in the way people talk. Nobody says, I think I'll work here for the next 20 years. Nobody says, I feel settled. Most people sound like they're adapting constantly, recovering constantly, trying to stabilize constantly. You can even hear it in everyday conversations. People say things like, I'm just trying to survive this year, or hopefully next year will be better. Like stability is always somewhere slightly ahead in the distance, never fully here. And after enough years living like that, people stop feeling rooted anywhere mentally. That's why even financially responsible people still feel behind sometimes. Because the emotional image of adulthood they grew up expecting never fully arrived. A lot of people thought by now they'd feel more secure than this, more certain, more established. Instead, many people feel like they're improvising their way through adulthood while pretending they understand what they're doing. And honestly, maybe that's why financial stress feels heavier now than it used to. Because it's no longer just affecting people's bank accounts, it's affecting their sense of identity. People don't just feel broke sometimes, they feel delayed. Like life itself keeps getting postponed financially. I think the scariest part about all of this is how quietly people adapted to it. At first, financial stress feels temporary. You tell yourself, this is just a rough phase. But eventually, the rough phase becomes your normal life. And humans can normalize almost anything if they live with it long enough. People normalize burnout, normalize anxiety, normalize checking their account balance before making basic plans, normalize feeling guilty for resting, normalize sitting awake at night mentally calculating the next month before the current one even ends. And eventually the stress becomes less traumatic, but more permanent. That's why so many people seem emotionally flat now. Not devastated, not panicking, just tired. A very specific kind of tired. The kind that comes from carrying uncertainty for too long. And the worst part is that long-term financial stress slowly changes your personality in ways you don't notice immediately. You become more cautious, less optimistic, less spontaneous, you hesitate more, you overthink small purchases, you stop expecting stability, and start preparing for problems instead. That's not laziness, that's adaptation. And honestly, I think a lot of people are grieving a version of adulthood they thought they were going to have. Not luxury, not mansions, just stability. The ability to relax without feeling financially guilty all the time. The ability to imagine the future without immediately feeling anxious. The ability to feel like life is moving forward instead of constantly being maintained. And maybe that's why this feeling became so widespread recently. Because deep down, people sense something emotionally changed about modern life. Life became harder to settle into, harder to trust, harder to feel safe inside of financially. So if you've been feeling trapped lately, exhausted lately, emotionally stuck lately, you're probably not imagining it. A lot of people quietly carry the exact same feeling every day. Not because they're weak, not because they failed, but because constant uncertainty eventually wears people down psychologically. And maybe the saddest part is how many people started believing that feeling is simply what adulthood is supposed to feel like now.